We're good to go, Heidi?
Yeah, we are live and ready when you are, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Soldovia, regular meeting of the Soldovia City Council, Monday, April 11th, 2022. And the time is 6:12 p.m. Apologize to anyone in the public. We had our work session ran a little bit long. So it's 6:12 p.m. now. Call the meeting to order. We'll go ahead and do roll call. Nathan?
Here.
Sweat?
Here.
Rojas?
Here.
Kennedy? Here. And Swick?
Here.
I see you. I know you're here. And Peyton is excused tonight. Okay, let's see. Heidi, you're in there. If you want to go ahead and lead us tonight in the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Excused absences, we just have Peyton. Item D, agenda approval. We'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda by Rojas, second by Sweat. Any further discussion on the agenda before we vote? Okay, all those in favor of agenda approval tonight, Nathan?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy? Aye. Swick?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0, one absent. All right, item E, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and one vote. A council member may request to remove any item for discussion and a separate vote. Items removed from the consent agenda will be placed under new business. Let's see, item 1, approval of minutes. We have minutes of the regular meeting, February 28th, 2022, found on page 7. Minutes of the special meeting, March 7th, 2022, found on page 13, and minutes of the regular meeting, March 14th, 2022, found on page 16. So those are the 3 packets of minutes for the consent agenda. Item 2 of the consent agenda consists of ordinance introduction, which is ordinance 22-12, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Soldovia, Alaska, amending Soldovia Municipal Code Title 11 by adopting section 11.11.005 definitions and amending sections 11.11.010 permit application, 11.11.020 violations, and 11.11030 rules and regulations, special conditions. That's recommended for public hearing date of April 25th. That's found on page 21 of your packet. And again, that's the one item for ordinance introduction on the consent agenda. There's 5 resolutions tonight on your consent agenda. First one's 3A, resolution 22-39, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Soldovia authorizing the destruction of records from the archives that have met their retention schedule requirements. That's found on page 25 of your packet. Item 3B, resolution 22-40, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Soldovia accepting an additional amount of $178.57 in American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 ARPA funds and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the appropriate documents. That's found on page 27 of your packet. Item 3C is resolution 22-41. It's a resolution of the City Council of the City of Soldovia awarding the professional services contract for water and sewer infrastructure grant writing services through RFP number 01-2022 to CRW Engineering Group LLC in an amount not to exceed $15,000. and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the appropriate documents. That's found on page 31 of your packet. Item 3D is resolution 22-42, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, amending the Alaska Department of Health and Social Services Nutrition, Transportation, and Support Services grant for the senior meals program from $39,641.77 to $48,067.53, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the appropriate documents. That's found on page 50 of your packet. And the final item of the consent agenda is item 3E. That's resolution 22-43, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia entering into a memorandum of agreement with the Kenai Peninsula Borough Office of Emergency Management regarding the placement and maintenance of emergency sirens, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the appropriate documents. Again, that's found on page 53 of your packet. So just to recap for the consent agenda, we have 3 sets of minutes. We have 1 ordinance introduction, and we have 5 resolutions. At this time, does any member wish to remove any of these off of the consent agenda to be discussed separately? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda by Sweat. We have a second by Rojas. Any more discussion before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor, Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0 with 1 excused. And that'll take us to item F, mayoral proclamations. And this will be honoring the public service of former Seldovia council members John Kohlberg from 2008 to 2021 and Pearlie Morrison from 2015 through 2021. And Heidi, I am looking in the packet for that. The page number is not, is it at the beginning or where did I miss it?
It wasn't a formal proclamation, Mr. Mayor. I think you were just going to speak on it, and we actually have a gift to present to our former council members. So unfortunately, Mr. Morrison had to leave, but we do have Mr. Kohlberg here. So if you'd like, I can go ahead and present this and then you can speak on it. The city staff were able to go out and procure hats with a Seldovia on the front, and speaks to the dedication of service. For Mr. Kohlberg, it does say dedicated public service 2008 to 2021. So we have Mr. Morrison's here that we will deliver to him, which was 2015 to 2021. Just really wanted to make sure to present this to Mr. Kohlberg and appreciation for his years of service.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. And I would agree. John, I know you're in there. If you can hear me, thank you. We want, that goes from all of us. It takes a lot of work and dedication to spend as many years as you did on the city council. And it's all those years don't go unnoticed. So we appreciate your contributions to your community.
Well, thank you. It's been real interesting. It was totally opposite of what I thought it would be. And I actually think I saw the whole gambit. Some really good times, some really bad times, some happy times, and some super frustrating times. And as I like to say, we're slowly walking out of the Stone Age, and catching up with the real world. So you guys keep up the good work and keep moving forward.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. All right, item G, public presentations, prior notice. Did we have one for tonight, Heidi?
Correct, Mr. Mayor. We have a Miss Ann Burnett, and she provided a written public comment on page 58 of the regular packet, and she is in the audience to speak to that.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Campbell and City Council members. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you bet. Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ann Barnett. Since 2016, my family has been summer residents in Seldovia. We have property on the dump road at 901 Rocky Street. I'm here today to share about my family's hope for a reversal of the recent harbor's no net cleaning policy and hope for better communication with Harbor Master Peterson over the issue of net cleaning gill nets in the harbor. As a local commercial set net fishing family, we need to clean our gill nets in the harbor twice a week during the months of June and July. Seldovia Bay commercial fishermen are part of your sustainable economy, one of Seldovia's top 5 values. However, we have been asked to abandon net cleaning in the harbor. Harbor Master Peterson reported in a meeting on March 31st of nonstop complaints over the last 3 years. And she stated we were not aligning with city code. These codes refer to keeping the area neat and not leaving objects on the floats in the harbor. Before I go further, I believe I should briefly describe net cleaning. We place our nets on aluminum net racks on a harbor float, power wash any accumulation of seaweed or silt from our nets, and restack the nets in our small skiff for the next fishing opener. Anything power washed from our nets is organic and disperses within moments of being returned to the water. We power wash or hand scrub the parts of the harbor we use afterwards. We are concerned about the no net cleaning policy for several reasons. First, the city states on its website these words: "The city of Seldovia fully supports industrial uses of the Seldovia Small Boat Harbor, including commercial fishery operations." As commercial fishermen, we are considered industrial users. The city fully supports us within the harbor, but we are being asked to stop using the harbor for the only industrial use we need, net cleaning. We are also concerned we were never able to respond to specific complaints about overspray on boats. We don't doubt there have been complaints, but besides spraying down the floats more carefully after our work, we truly didn't understand how we could be better harbor citizens concerning that matter. Also, we don't recall a time we interfered with another harbor user's need to pass by our work. We bring in and remove all our net cleaning equipment the day of cleaning. Unfortunately, several substitute harbor masters confused us with past and present commercial fishermen. Another fisherman last year did leave nets, tarps, and line out week after week on one of the floats. If we must abandon net cleaning in the harbor, we ask that it is based on what we alone have done. We would like to offer a suggestion for the future, not just come with complaints, but come with solutions and ideas. Those who want to complain can have their complaints recorded in a signed logbook with the harbor master. Let's have clear evidence we are not complying in the harbor. Until then, reconsider this change in the net cleaning policy. If a logbook shows we are not following city code, we should clean our nets elsewhere. If we get seaweed on someone's boat, please present us with the evidence. Show us the boat or a picture of the overspray. I do want to acknowledge that Harbor Master Peterson did suggest 2 other locations for us to clean our nets: the grid and washdown pad. However, these alternative locations are not usable except at certain tides. No other commercial fisherman we know cleans their nets away from the water, and only when the tide makes it possible, nor do they trailer their nets to a net cleaning location. Fishermen are part of Seldovia's unique history. We love the pictures of the cannery buildings and workers and the fish. We remember how we were at the center of a great industry. Now communities must carefully respect the past and adjust to the future. Since Seldovia says it supports industrial users, please suggest Harbor Master Peterson reconsider her decision to disallow net cleaning in the harbor. And please consider a more transparent system for harbor users to log complaints. Thank you, Mayor Campbell and City Council members for your service. I appreciate your attention to this matter.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Barnett, for that information. Sorry, I was on mute there. Anyone from council have any questions or comments regarding the issue over net cleaning?
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask?
Yeah, you bet, Vivian.
Yeah, I was wondering if someplace in the information we got, there was a question about the harbor master had asked, or you were offered something about purchasing or taking some of the old harbor float and using that for your fish clean or for your net cleaning. Could you fill me in on that? Ann?
I don't recall, I haven't had a conversation with Harbor Master Peterson about getting some retired float from the harbor. Is the harbor retiring some floats?
I'm not sure there. I'd have to go back and look at my where I read that at. But no, I'm not sure what we have on hand, but I think it was mentioned. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I just wonder if you remembered anything about that conversation or had a conversation about it. You'd have to ask. Go ahead.
Excuse me. I have talked about retired harbor floats, but we do not have property on the water. And so just having a harbor float, it just opens my imagination for solutions. And by June 2nd, we have to have some great imagination. So I appreciate you bringing up a thought. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I guess I've got a question. So, I mean, you're not the only set netter out there. I mean, so I know there's other people you mentioned that were also cleaning on the docks. Is anyone, we haven't heard from anyone else yet, as to what their plans are. Have you talked to any of the other set netters around Seldovia to see what they have planned, or if they're in support of doing something different here?
So I don't know how polite it is, because I have not been on the city council to say names about other community members and what they may or may not do, or especially if there's conflict in this area. Can you give me guidance?
Yeah, I was just asking in general. I mean, I don't need names. I'm just asking in general if
Okay.
Anyone else if you've got any input, either negative or positive.
Well, there have been, in the last couple of years, 3 fishermen in the bay. And one fisherman does not clean in the harbor, has very established routines outside of the harbor. More recently, another fisherman placed kind of, I would say, in open water is what the Department of Natural Resources calls it, placed nets out of like kind of shore leases. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so that fisherman, although very familiar with the bay, was kind of coming in and net cleaning in a new and kind of experimental way in the harbor. And that's the individual that left things out at the end of one of the floats for a while.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was just trying to get an understanding of that. So
I don't know of anybody else seeking another solution to give me ideas, if that might be what you're
Yeah, that's that's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay, no, sir.
And do you guys typically clean at your slip, or do you go out to right to the end of a dock, or what's your typical process there?
Thank you for asking. After breakfast and after everybody in the harbor is woken up, so 9 o'clock in the morning, generally we've been down the float where after the fast ferry has taken off, because it benefits us and the rest of the harbor users to be where there's the least amount of foot traffic and there's the most amount of space. And have honestly had a lot of really positive experiences where we've got my elementary school kids, I guess he's middle school now, and other people passing by. And it feels really good to be able to talk to people that visit about fishing. And so we're out of the way, but we're also have passerbyers because we're down at the end of the longest float that extends toward is that the mouth of the harbor? The main entrance exit.
Yep, I got you. Okay.
But we have, we've cleaned nets past the fish cleaning station when it's kind of not a hot time and people aren't moving past there. And we've done it at the end of, I'm going to say C or B floats. And that's where we ran into a bit of a sticking point with the other set netter, because the tarps and the lines were in an area where we would normally bring in our gear, do our work. 2 hours later, take all of our stuff out. And it was nice to be way down at the end of those floats so it took an option away for our in and out net cleaning to have things left on the float. So we feel sensitive to the fact that leaving things on the floats is not cool and doesn't work in the harbor, because it was a wrinkle in our system last year.
Gotcha. Okay. Nope. Understood. Anyone else have any questions or comments on this?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yep, you bet.
And I'm sorry, I do not know this particular city code, but is net cleaning allowed in the harbor or not?
Is that a question for me? I'd be happy to.
Yes.
Net cleaning, until I believe it was February of this year, is allowed. And what is kind of a beautiful thing about the harbor is that it says that the city of Seldovia fully supports industrial uses of the Seldovia small boat harbor, including commercial fishery operations. And besides the oil dump, I'm not sure how industrial users are supported. And so my answer is yes, net cleaning is where, if the harbor is where net cleaning should happen. If you're a set netter.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask another question?
Yeah, you bet, Vivian.
Yeah, so Ann, when you guys have a slip in the harbor, right?
No, we don't. We move in and out of transient so many times throughout the day, back and forth to the nets, that we do not have a slip.
So you pay for transient every time you're throughout the summer? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, that's what we've done since 2016.
Okay, and so you pull out, or you pull your nets out where the fast ferry's at? And so how you can pretty much clean your nets and put them back in your boat in what time frame?
Well, when we get slick, 2 hours, but training deckhands, I'd say we start out at 3 hours and then we whittle it down to 2.
Okay. And so you do it in other places besides down by the fast ferry? You had mentioned another down the B finger or something?
Yes. At the end of C or B.
Okay.
One of them has less nails and less snags.
Mhm.
and all the cleats. We've been just south of the fish cleaning station. Yes, and then out past the fast ferry. So, I mean, we've done it successfully in 4 different locations and just kind of moved around depending on who is in and using other parts of the harbor.
Okay. And so when were you notified about the issues, the problem that the harbor master saw?
I don't have the letter with me, but we were notified in either January or February, because Harbor Master Peterson mentioned at the end of the fishing season last year, that we should find somewhere else to net clean. That was just an exchange of like just a conversation that we
Okay.
had. And then midwinter, we sent a letter to her saying, we've just racked our brains and don't have a solution. And thereafter, in either January or February, we received a letter saying that net cleaning was being discontinued. And then we saw it posted also on the Harbor Master's webpage, a brief note about no more net cleaning.
Mhm. Okay, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian. All right, anyone else? Okay, well, and thank you for bringing that, come tonight and laying out your case before us. Obviously, if there are anything else, if there's anything else to consider, please let the city administration know, and then we'll double back with the harbor master and city manager and take another look at this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Campbell. May I email each of you my full testimony? I wasn't sure what was going to make it in to you.
Yeah, if you've got something else that didn't make it into the packet tonight, sure. There's and all of our email addresses are obviously listed on the city's website there.
Okay, thank you for your consideration. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony tonight. Okay, all right, we'll move on to item H, public presentations for items not on the agenda. Do we have anyone, Heidi, that wishes to speak?
We do have a
Right.
hand. Yep, we
Okay.
do have a hand, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Laurel Hiltz.
Okay. Go ahead, Laurel.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me okay?
Yep, got you loud and clear.
Great, thank you so much. Just some things that are going on in the community this month and looking forward into May. This being Holy Week, we've got some Easter activities going on with egg dyeing on Thursday for kids, and Friday night at the chapel, there's a teen Easter egg hunt, and Saturday, there's a community Easter egg hunt taking place, followed by an Easter party at the chapel. So those are fun things going on for the kids. And then on along the Holy Week line of things, Friday at 3 o'clock at Seldovia Bible Chapel will be a Good Friday service. And then there's a gathering on Sunday morning at 7:30 a.m. at Outside Beach for a sunrise service, followed by breakfast at the chapel, and then 11 o'clock service at the chapel and a 2 o'clock service at the Lutheran Church. So if you want a way to celebrate Easter over these next few days, it looks like there's a number of ways to do that and get together with the community. Towards the end of the month, Seldovia Village Tribe will be hosting a spring carnival and having some basketball activities and kid games, and special guests. Team Hollywood will be returning to Seldovia with their goodwill message and their basketball skills and abilities. The last time they were here, they slam dunked so hard, it is possible that they broke the backboard, but that won't happen this time. But lots of great hijinks and fun is guaranteed to happen. So be watching for information on that. And then in May, we'll see the bike rodeo take place in early May, and we just start running towards summer from there. So those are just a few of the things going on in the community and at Seldovia Village Tribe. And again, Seldovia Bay Ferry is going to start on Thursday, May 26th, going into Memorial Day weekend, all the way through the second week in September. So lots of fun ahead, and plans are in place, getting nailed down for the 4th of July for Coming Home 2022. I know the Arts Council is working on the Solstice Festival plans and a lot more. So just be keeping an eye out for updated schedules and information as we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Laurel. Anyone on council have any questions or comments for Laurel? Okay, thanks again, Laurel. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll go ahead to item I, committee and advisory board reports. And I don't believe we have any tonight. Heidi, is that correct?
We do. We have Mr. Walt Sonnen, and Mr. Mayor, if I may, we also did have Mr. Morrison join us late. So I don't know if you wanted me to just take a brief moment to present him with our token of appreciation, or.
Sure, if he's there, let's just do it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor Campbell. And Mr. Morrison, you did miss it earlier. We had Councilmember Colberg was here, but we just wanted to present a token of appreciation. We have this ball cap made up with your years of service on the side. So dedicated public service 2015 to 2021. I just wanted to be able to present that in appreciation of your time serving as a council member.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I don't really know how much I like my years of service here. Anyway, thank you guys. It was interesting as well as educational.
Thank you, Pearlie. Appreciate that. John said something so many similar in kind of similar ways. So, but again, we all appreciate, regardless of how your experience was, obviously it takes a lot of dedication to, put forth the time and effort, and we appreciate you doing that for the community. So obviously, anytime anyone wants to volunteer, that's we have to have, the city runs on volunteers. So much appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And now we have Mr. Walt Sonnen for a committee and advisory board report.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, I'm here to speak for the SOS Response Organization and as my position as your representative on the CIRCAC organization. I'll start off with the SOS organization. A significant thing that happened here within the last couple of weeks was that our office manager had spoken with Rachel, the city manager, about the $3,000 membership fee that the city has been paying for the last several years. And this came about as a reorganization of our quote membership, where we went from individual members to what you might consider a corporate member. Todd Paxton, who we sort of partner with, the general manager of CISPRI, had brought this up. And because basically the SOS organization was running out of money, and because we provide for him a contingency plan, he thought it, under our urging, thought that it would be better that if he contributed more money to us so that we could stay afloat, because the alternative would probably cost him considerably more to cover his obligations for oil spill response in the lower inlet. At that time, he was pretty good pals with Cassidy. They helped each other out with some things that were going on with the Seattle Recovery Center. And it seems that Cassidy had an extra $3,000 from the sale of some pilings that was not dedicated. So she volunteered to join our organization as a member, city member, for $3,000. And I was actually surprised that the city council didn't question this. Well, it went through the budget last year without question. And as happened in a meeting between Jamie Martin and Rachel, because Jamie also takes care of the fire and EMS accounting and whatnot. The $3,000 came up, and I realized that I think all of us realize that the city is kind of in a pinch for money, and $3,000 is a considerable amount of money. And so Rachel asked, and we agreed through email and whatnot, that it was probably a good idea for the city to remain a member with the consideration of perhaps free rent at that we enjoy at the office, which we were paying almost free rent before. It was $100 a month throughout the year, and that included the heat, electricity, and security of the office. Also, we had enjoyed free moorage for our skiff, which is also available for fire and other emergencies for the city. We have an agreement there. We also enjoy the space that is offered for us for the connexes that we keep our gear in, as well as the DEC connexes for the spill response equipment. And they're the use of the harbor floats and the ramps for launching of our equipment and whatnot. And so we came to it's not a demand, it was put forward as a demand, but perhaps a friendly agreement with the city in lieu of the $3,000 membership to offer these services that I had just mentioned. And so I don't think there's anything formal that's been put forward on that, but I asked that the city council consider this, and maybe we can go forward with the city's membership and the city council person Peyton's membership on our board, etc. And so if there's any misunderstandings or questions on that, I'd be happy to address them now. Other than that, I'll go on with my SORCAC report.
Walt, let's see if anyone's got any questions on the SOS piece of this real quick, if you don't mind.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
I certainly would be in support of that. That sounds like a good deal for everybody.
Thanks, George. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I think that's a great option. Back when that $3,000 was given, as a council member at that time, I thought it was just for a one year donation. But so I applaud you for considering to change the arrangement we had before, Walt. And I'm in favor of the arrangement that's been worked out between yourself and the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I would support that too, what Walt presented to us. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'll just chime in real quick. Yeah, I too would be generally in support of that. It seems like a reasonable solution. I'd like to see that taken one step further if we don't already. If we're going to be doing a trade-off in a sense, I'd like to see an MOA or an MOU drafted at some point here in the future between the city and SOS, just to, like you say, Walt, so we can get that in writing, and then that's the basis of the relationship going forward, so that no one's going to come back and quibble about whether it's rent, electricity, the intent of the skiff, who can use the skiff, who can't, moorage, all that. I think with just a simple 1 or 2 page MOA, we can get all the details, the particulars in there, and then it's a done deal. Rachel, is that something that you could see happening?
Hey there, Mayor. Yes, I hadn't brought this before council because I still needed to ask a few more questions. And then I was already planning to draft an MOA that the council would consider formally. So Walt just beat me to the punch there. But yes, already planning to do that. I'm glad to see SOS's support and the city's support in such an important service.
Perfect. Thank you. Jennifer, go ahead.
note in there, I believe there might already be something drafted regarding the skiff. I don't know if that needs to be looked at or built upon or incorporated or whatever. Jamie might have to find that somewhere. As far as the fire department using that skiff.
Yeah, I think either way, it's a good idea to have that piece in the mix, just so it's everyone has a clear understanding of skiff use and all that, training, et cetera, et cetera. So, all right, well, it looks like we've got positive direction on that. Go ahead with the second half of your presentation.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a request for public comment on that topic if you'd like to accept it.
Yep, absolutely. Let's hear it.
Yeah, this is Pearlie Morrison, 346 Iliamna. Just wondering if there's any kind of boundaries on how much space you can take up where the connexes are. Can that keep exploding into a bigger area and then you'll need another area for, is that all the equipment that's ever going to get brought in here, or is there borders somewhere on that piece, or is it just open to?
Well, I don't know. I never even considered that. I guess I don't think that we look to expand anymore. A lot of the equipment that we're involved with is within the boundaries of the Seattle Recovery Center. And that all the SISPRI equipment is within those boundaries. There are 3 connexes there. 2 of them belong to the state. The Alaska DEC has them, and the equipment that is in those 2 connexes are at the courtesy of the state. The SOS has 1 container, which is jam-packed full of stuff. We don't have any more space. I suppose if we scored another container, maybe we could find a place to put that. I don't know. I will mention that the SOS organization owns a lot just across the street from this building that Russell Lee uses for his caravan equipment. That lot belongs to SOS. And if we did need to expand, I'm sure we could expand on that piece of property.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's some kind of boundaries, and can SOS at some point decide, well, we don't like that spot, we want to be closer to the water and just move, or is it a sealed deal that that's their piece and that's where they're going to stay? Thanks.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Okay, thank you, Pearlie. Appreciate that. Yeah, and that could be something else that could be incorporated in that MOA as well. So just the use and understanding of the current piece of property. All right, well, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, well, as your representative to the CERCAC organization, in the last couple of weeks, I attended a couple of meetings. One, I sit as a committee member on the props committee, which is preparedness, response, operation, and safety. And this committee looks into, the happenings around the inlet. One of the big things, I guess, going is what we call the ice cameras. There's I don't know, half a dozen or more cameras up and down the upper inlet, basically, that are used for ice for the mariners that traverse the inlet in wintertime, but they're operational in the summer as well. They're not publicly available, but it gives the pilots and whatnot a pretty good idea of what the ice is doing, and that's sponsored by the CERCAC organization. We had our one of 3 annual meetings virtually last Friday, and we had a presentation from Hillcorps, Just to give you a basic idea of what they're up to. They plan to spend $15 million a year in upgrades on old equipment. And Hillcor basically owns everything in the inlet these days. And some of this equipment is more than 40, getting on to 50 years old. And they seem like they are very aware of the equipment and are replacing it as necessary. They're looking to remove the Christie Lee platform. This was the offshore dock that would take the oil across the inlet to be processed at the, well, now Marathon plant in the Nikiski area. This was abandoned with a pipeline that Zerkak had been pining for years, and they acquiesced and put, I don't know, through some further acquisitions, came up with a pipeline, which is regarded to be much safer in terms of oil spills and whatnot. So anyway, that dock is scheduled for removal. Hillcor has 1,200 operating wells in the Cook Inlet Basin. Many of those are onshore, and they have 2 onshore drilling rigs that will operate all of 2022. And they take great pride in donating money to nonprofits. They and their employees donated $1.8 million this last year. They give each employee $25,000 to donate to whoever they choose in the nonprofit area. We had a presentation from Resolve Marine, and this one was kind of a surprise to me because I was pretty much unaware of this company. They are nationwide. There's a very large organization involved in salvage, oil spill, wreck removal, underwater operations, marine construction, etc. And they have an enormous amount of oil spill equipment in Anchorage that's all containerized, ready for shipment. Just in Homer alone, they have 30 connexes that are full of oil spill equipment, and they have 30,000 in Homer. They have 30,000 feet of shore boom, 2,200 feet of ocean boom, fast tank skimmers, and these 30 Connex boxes. I was amazed. But what else I didn't know was that they are in partnership with CISPRI, and we as members we question sometimes about the tanker that runs pretty much weekly from Valdez to Nikiski with crude. What happens if something happens outside of Cook Inlet and outside of Prince William Sound? Well, apparently this Resolve Marine is in partnership with SERVS, the Prince William Sound response organization, and CISPRI with the equipment to cover the ocean area outside of these 2 bodies of water. So I was very happy to learn all of that. And we had a number of things. The meeting lasted for 5.5 hours, but basically elections and whatnot. And I was approved, and I will serve for another 3 years. And I would like to make a special thanks to Rachel for sending me a personal note, thanking me for stepping up to serve another 3 years. That's the end of my report.
You're on mute.
Yep.
Mayor.
Whoops, yep, sorry about that. Thank you, Walt. Any questions, comments from anyone on council? As always, lots of good information regarding SOS and CERCAC both.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, well, thank you for a great presentation, as always, very informative. And thank you also for your service in your next 3 years. Thank you very much for stepping up again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
I want to say exactly the same thing Vivian just said. So thank you, Walt, for your report and for volunteering.
Thank you, Bobby. Anyone else? Okay, yep, Walt, for me too. Appreciate your service, and we really appreciate you keeping an eye out for Soldovia. Much appreciated. All right, we will move on to item J, administrative reports. None. Item K, public hearings. Item K1 is action memorandum 22-06, approving the certification of the FY 2021 audit as presented by Altman Rogers and Company, certified public accountants. And this will be found on page 59, and I'll let the city manager take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. So the final audit is actually in your laydown packet. It has the signature of Altman and Rogers, and we have our auditor, Steve Wadley, in attendance to answer any questions council may have, give a presentation of the draft FY21 statement, and then there's the action memorandum for council to adopt the findings. So I'll turn it over to Steve.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, we got you loud and clear, Steve.
Okay. Well, if everybody has a copy of the financial statements in front of them, in your packet there, I'm going to actually go over the independent auditors report, which is on page 1. I'll give you guys a minute. Let me know when you have that in your packet.
Okay, so our packet is labeled. Yeah, we've got yours. Okay, title page is 3, and then it just starts on down. And the first page 5, we've got the starts off with the letter to the governing board on page 4 and 5. So you want us to scroll down past that?
Yes, it should. You should have something on our letterhead that says independent auditors report.
Okay.
Mayor, it looks like that's page 13 in your laydown packet.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at here, 12, 13. Okay, yep, there we go, 13.
Okay, well, this is your independent audit report for the year ended June 30th, 2021. It outlines management's responsibility for the financial statements. And specifically, management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with GAAP. And our responsibility as auditors is to express an opinion on the financial statement based on our audit. As part of our audit procedures, we ask management for supporting documentation that supports the balances in the financial statements. We performed audit procedures over the supporting documentation and made sure that they agreed with the trial balance that we got from the city. And your trial balance is actually used to write these financial statements. Part of our substantive procedures, one of the things that we look at is we call it final analytical, where we're looking at the prior year versus current year, looking at the actual versus the budget analysis. And specifically what we're looking for is material misstatements in the financial statements that weren't discovered as part of our other audit procedures. So it's just kind of a fail-safe mechanism to look at items that, you know, might not at first glance look misstated. And so that's what we do is part of our final audit procedures is to look for material misstatements. Our opinion over all this audit procedures is on the next page. And it's labeled opinions. And it basically says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the city of Seldovia, Alaska, as of June 30th, 2021, and the respective changes in financial position for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So this is a clean opinion. It's an unmodified opinion. You know, part of that gathering, supporting documentation that we required management to gather, we looked at the supporting documentation and found that it was materially correct. So therefore, you guys have a unmodified opinion. Due to that, you know, you guys are a governmental entity. We also perform internal control testing, where we look at your guys' systems and test them for internal controls. And that, I don't know where it's going to be in your packet, but on the financial statements, it's on page 61. And it says, the title of it says, Report on Internal Control over Financial Reporting and on Compliance and Other Matters based on an audit of the financial statements performed in accordance with governmental auditing standards. Rachel, can you help out and identify what page number that would be on?
You bet. That's page 76 of 82 in your laydown packet.
Okay, is everybody there?
Yep, I got it there.
Okay, so for internal control testing, what we do is we make sure that management is following all the policies and procedures as set forth by the council. Specifically, what we looked at for our testing of internal controls this year is we looked at 40 accounts payable transactions. We looked at 40 payroll transactions. We looked at all material checks greater than or equal to $6,000 throughout the year. And then we looked at 5 of your cash receipts because we took a substantive procedures vouching all grants and material revenue accounts. We looked at material journal entries that were posted by management at an amount greater than or equal to $20,000 during the year. And then finally, we looked at your billings for your port and utilities, and we pulled 40 transactions in there. And then you guys have a few credit cards that people are using. So we pulled a separate sample of credit cards to make sure that all the credit cards had a business purpose and they were properly approved and they had supporting documentation to them. And our results of this testing are in the last paragraph of this page that basically says, our consideration of internal control was for the limited purposes described in the first paragraph of this section and was not designed to identify all deficiencies in internal controls that might be material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. And therefore, material weaknesses or significant deficiencies may exist that have not been identified. Given these limitations, during our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls that we considered to be material weaknesses. However, we did identify certain deficiencies in internal controls that we considered to be significant deficiencies. So there's two findings during this course, and we'll go over each of those findings for you. But and they were pretty much repeat findings from prior years. These two, so we're hoping that during the next year audit that these issues or findings will be addressed and dealt with, so we don't have internal control issues. And as you're, developing more, trying to get more grants and stuff, that's going to be real key that you, work on these findings and resolve them and get them, get the matter addressed, so they don't continue in the future. So let's quickly go through the findings here. Maybe they're just a couple more pages beyond in your packet. They're on page 63 of my report, but is that true, Rachel? Just a couple more pages?
Yeah.
Yep, should be on page 78 on the summary.
Okay, so this first one was a repeat finding. Well, actually, both of them are repeat findings from the prior year. You had an internal control issue over payroll. And basically during our testing, we noted one instance where the employee's time card was not approved by an authorized member of management. So, every transaction that we're looking at. So when we take a sample of transactions, when we look at yours, if we find issues in there, they're either going to be, a management letter comment, which would be like a control deficiency, or it's going to be a significant deficiency or potentially a material weakness. So since this was kind of, a finding that we saw in the prior year that still, there still is some issues related to approval of transactions, that, we just want to make sure that you guys are aware of the findings and you guys have a plan in place or corrective action plan to deal with those issues. So pretty much, anything that we do find, results in either a finding or a control deficiency, because what we're doing is we're not looking at 100% of the transactions. All we're doing is looking at a sample of transactions. Making sure that the supervisor signs off on a time card assures the city council that the employee is just not falsely putting down time. The reason behind that control is to have another person double check, especially the supervisor. The supervisor should know how many hours the employees worked, and they indicate their approval of those hours by signing the time card. It's just little things like that that are important. It keeps your checks and balances in place and make sure that fraudulent activity doesn't happen. The more checks and balances you have in place, the better assurance you're going to have that there is no fraud taking place. The second finding probably is on your very next page. It was internal controls over credit cards. So I indicated that we look at credit cards. We're looking because credit card is probably one of the highest areas where fraud can occur. Just by, it's pretty easy to swipe and to swipe a company card for personal reasons. So one of the things that we're looking at there is to make sure that there's supporting documentation attached to the credit card, making sure that it was approved by somebody, and making sure that we look at the transaction and make sure that from an audit standpoint, that we see that it has a business purpose. So, during the course, it was noted that the purchase request for one of the 3 months tested was completed and approved several months after the transaction had took place. So, I see this in smaller cities happen where, where we give a sample, we want you to pull this sample of credit cards. And so the city is like, oh, shoot, nobody signed off or nobody approved this. I'm just going to go ahead and sign off on this. But that kind of defeats the purpose if the approval is done well after the transactions took place. So ideally, you would get approval to use your credit card, that those transactions are, signed off and approved by an authorized individual, not months and months and months later. And I don't have that transaction here in front of me, but I'm pretty for sure it was almost like 6 months later that the approval happened on those transactions. So those transactions were already incurred and paid by then. It's just, we had a slight issue with approval over payroll, and we're running into some issues related to approval over credit cards. And credit cards, both are equally important, but credit cards are one area that, it's easy to commit fraud if internal controls aren't in place. So those are the two findings that you had over the financial statements. They're both repeat findings. Overall, if you looked at last year, you had 5 findings. So this year you have 2 findings. So you cut back on the findings by 3, meaning that you implemented some corrective actions and solved those issues. But there's still some approval issues that need to be addressed going forward.
And Steve, I've got a quick question for you on in terms of the credit cards. Now, a lot of times, when I use my company credit card, it's for incidentals. I don't necessarily have, I'm authorized to use my card, but then I have to, I've got to, it comes through and I have to approve it, submit all my documentation, my receipt. And I know we have up to 30 days, to do, we've changed. It fluctuates from 10 to 30 days in our approval process. But it's typically before I think the credit card bill is paid, so those charges can be disputed if they needed to. Is that generally what you like to see? Is that when you say in a timely manner, is within that current cycle of that card? Is that what you're looking for?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so there should be approval because, without, the more you extend the approval out, the more, if it was an individual that wanted to commit fraud, sure, eventually he's going to get caught, because people are reviewing the credit cards, but how much can he swipe in that amount of time, between the use of the credit card and the approval of the credit card.
Gotcha. Yep. Makes perfectly good sense. Appreciate that.
Is there, that's kind of the conclusion of the financial statements. I will quickly kind of go over the letter to the governing board here. And I know that's in a different area in your packet. Rachel, could I get a little help?
Page 5 of our packet.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mayor. So this letter to the governing board outlines our required communication with you guys. And it goes through, describes where you could find in the financial statements significant accounting policies and transactions, which are all under footnote 1 of the financial statements. It kind of outlines, revenue recognition, your policies and procedures as related to your grants, your information that's on your balance sheet, are all summarized in footnote 1 of the financial statements. And then, as we go through and we do our audit, there's always accounting estimates. Accounting estimates are not exact numbers, stuff that we can't tie to an invoice or anything like that. There's always accounting estimates. So what we are required to do as auditors is to disclose to you guys the accounting estimates that we came across during our audit of the financial statements. And the first estimate pretty much affects all opinion units of the city, and it's management's estimate of the collectability of accounts receivable. So management, has an allowance for doubtful accounts, for the accounts that they're not expecting the full payment from your customer. And so that estimate, that's truly a management's estimate. And so what we do as part of our audit procedures is we look at that estimate and make sure that we agree with the estimate, that it looks reasonable in comparison to the financial statements as a whole. And so we didn't really have any issues with the allowance account, but it is, not something that you can narrow down and say, this is my allowance account. It's truly an estimate. It's based on historical collections, whether a customer's paid, whether they haven't been paying for over a year. So these all add a factor into management's estimate of the allowance account. The second estimate is depreciation expense. So when you buy a truck, and management says the useful life of that truck is 5 years, that controls depreciation expense. So that truck is depreciated over 5 years. So those were the two areas that we saw, that where there's not an exact number, that management uses an estimate to reflect those. The next area and the last area that I wanted to bring up is the corrected and uncorrected misstatements. Pretty much, I think we've been doing your guys' audit since 2013, if I remember right. Don't hold me to that, but I think it's right around that time period. But every year we have adjustments. So, what we see is typical in a small city is, a lot of the, grant accruals and stuff like that are not posted when we arrive. So we propose several adjustments. All these adjustments that are listed here were approved by management and posted into the financial statements. But, these are typical adjustments to your grants, deferred revenue, accounts receivable. The one thing that probably isn't a typical adjustment, having to post a $92,000 adjustment to correct beginning fund balance was needed. But these other adjustments are pretty much, adjustments that we've had to post pretty much each and every year. Is there any questions related to, the financial statements, the audit process, anything that I can answer for you related to our audit?
Hey, Steve, one question real quick on those corrected and uncorrected misstatements from year to year. Is that kind of typically, I don't know how many other smaller municipalities you guys do audits for, but is that typical of, is that good? Is that bad? I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but typically you would find a few things like that at the beginning of an audit.
Yeah, we usually, the smaller cities, they don't have a lot of, people in place in their accounting department. And so, especially as far as the grant accruals go, most people just, record the expenses over there and they record the revenue that they received, and the ending accruals usually aren't booked. I think we've been booking those since 2013. The grant accruals, that's just something that we do. Typically, we're not doing adjustments to beginning fund balance. So that is an adjustment where, something got backdated into the prior year that was already closed, which caused a beginning balances to go off. So we had to fix that. That's not a typical journal entry that we would have to post. And then there was I just noticed another one here that's not typical, would be the $25,000 to correct the overstatement of cash in the general fund. So, one of the things that the bookkeepers and whatnot need to look out for is old outstanding items. Old outstanding items that never clear the bank are usually an indication of a bank reconciliation that is not prepared correctly. So during this process, we identified, approximately $25,000 worth of old outstanding items that needed to be corrected on there, to properly state cash at 6/30.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate that. I've got a number of questions additional, but I'm going to wait and see if anyone else on council has any other questions for Steve.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, if you could, Steve, if you could elaborate on the first item, which is the 92,373. Elaborate on your statement about the beginning fund balance. Did you explain that a little bit more, please?
Yeah, well, I know the city had hired contract accountants, and one of the areas was to fix the beginning balances. So you guys have had turnover right and left in the finance department. So we were real concerned with the balances at the beginning of the year. So the city, was interested in cutting back on our fees as much as possible. And I said, one way to do that would be to hire a contract accountant, make sure that, the beginning balances work, that cash works, that the city's recorded accounts payable for invoices that were owed as of 6/30. And they came out and they worked with the city. During the course of that, I don't know exactly the journal entries that were done, but we noticed that when we arrived for the first day of field work, one of the first things we do is we check beginning balances. Because if beginning balances are off, the rest of the balance sheet can be off. And so we were assuming that all this was going to be fixed by the contract accountant, but there was still a $92,373 beginning balance issue. So we started looking at that. It's pretty easy to discover what's wrong. One of the things that we do is we print out a prior year balance sheet, and we tie that 100% into the financial statements, and those should tick and tie back and forth. And then there were several of the accounts that were on the balance sheet that did not agree with the prior year. And so the adjustment is pretty easy. Once you've identified the accounts on the balance sheet, of course, your assets equal liability plus equity. So your balance sheet balances. So if AR is off by 10 grand, the offset of that is equity. Well, once you go through and you fix the entire balance sheet, you come down to the 92,373. So it's basically different items that were on your balance sheet, from cash to accounts receivable to accounts payable, transactions that were off from the prior year, that we proposed adjustments to fix to tie those into the beginning financials. And then that way, once we have that fixed, then we can really truly start on auditing the current year balances.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor,
thank you, Vivian.
I have a
Go ahead.
question. So yeah, I was looking at a couple of things here. So what exactly does that mean? Does that mean the CPA didn't do its job?
I can't speak to another CPA. I mean, obviously they posted some journal entries. I don't know if the journal entries they proposed didn't 100% fix everything, or whether, it could have been that because it was done remotely. So it could have been done where they gave them a journal entries, and potentially your staff, I don't know, could have posted an entry backwards, causing it to still be off from the original journal entry. So I can't speak to, somebody else performing the work. All I can really do is speak to when we arrived, they were off.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. Anyone else? Okay, I've got a couple questions for you, Steve, in terms of in regards to kind of some of the stuff we've been going through leading up to the audit here, and we've been looking at a number of past audits, and we've had some issues with some fund balances and stuff. I just got a series of questions. If you don't have the answer, that's fine. We can follow up, and we can do it in writing too if you need some additional time. But so you guys, if you took over in 2000, somewhere around 13, and I think before that we had BDO did a number of years. Generally, would Altman perform a municipal audit generally the same as BDO, or is there a big difference between the way firms handle and report an audit?
They're pretty close. Some people take more of a substantive procedures and less on testing of internal controls. We feel that that is an important part to make sure that our audit risk is appropriate. And audit risk is an incorrect conclusion or an incorrect finding. So we set that audit risk. And so, I don't know how much internal control testing, BDO does versus substantive procedures. We, as part of our audit procedures, incorporate both a substantive audit, where we're looking at different things and vouching transactions, making sure that the account balance is correct, but we also test internal controls. And technically, in a governmental, that is not required, but it is our policy at Altman Rogers that we test the internal controls. And the reason why we do that is not only for the end users, which are you guys, I think that as part of our audit procedures, you would want us to look at the internal controls of the city and test those to make sure that management is following all the rules and regulations as set forth by the council. But we could easily, it's not required, but what we do as far as Altman Rogers, any governmental entity, we automatically test internal controls.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's probably a good thing, especially in a small, smaller municipalities where you don't have a lot of backup and, multiple accountants, on staff to look at some of this stuff and just generally make sure that things are going the right way. Another question we had, so one thing that's come up is we apparently have had some audits that we can't find that were approved for FY 12, 13, and 14. Now, are you guys typically notified if an audit is either accepted or rejected in either direction, I guess?
Yeah, so most of the time, the council approves those transactions. Other than that, so for us to be able to finalize and print, these financial statements, so we can't print these on our own. One of the things that we do is, we will be talking with the city manager, making sure that they are ready for finalizing the report, and then we send them a management rep letter. That is put on to your guys' letterhead, basically saying that you disclosed everything to us, and you're not trying to hide anything. That letter we obtain. Once we get that letter, then we're, depending on the policies and procedures, most city governments, it has to go to the city council for their approval first before that gets finalized. I can't speak to 2012. That was BDO. 2013, I'm really would be surprised that you couldn't find a council approval in there for those, because generally all the financial statements, just like we're doing tonight, go in front of you guys. And then after all the questions are answered, then you guys, do an ordinance or a resolution approving the audit. And then once that happens, then that audit is over. I know in the past, a lot of times when we were on site, we were, and there was a council meeting, we would kind of go through the results of our audit. I know it's a completely different council now than it was back then. generally, that audit is, is supposed to be approved, and I would find it hard to believe that the 13 wasn't approved, because the council's always been heavily involved in the audit process. So, when you guys were going through the Cassell debacle, we were in constant communication with that council at the time, going through and, disclosing. I mean, while we were out on site doing the audit, there was a meeting, and we had a meeting with the council, and, describing the issues that we ran into, related to audit delays because of the implementation of the new system, and just the quirks and the bugs that were in the system from the beginning. So I always think that there's been, great communication. And I can't remember the older gentleman that used to be the mayor. You guys probably remember him.
There was a few of them.
Oh, but he would always swing by the city when we were doing the audit, just to see how things were going. I wish I could remember his name, but he was a nice old guy.
Could have been Dick or Walter. Or, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, one of those guys. So
I think the communication has always been there. And I would find that really, I mean, I would be shocked if you can't find that in the council meeting minutes.
yeah, and that's just one, that's an anomaly we're trying to get to the bottom of, is just, going through past records, 12, 13, and 14. So we'll continue to dig on that. I was just wondering generally, yeah, so it's generally, it goes without saying that it needs to be approved so that you can move forward, close that audit out. And then, there's, you guys know that there's closure on that one. Okay, and then we've got another few more here, sorry. We had going through our latest budgetary process here, and again, this all comes back to fund balances, and I know its fund balances have not been fun for us, but we had back in 13, we had our permanent fund was included in our general fund, and this would have been the first year you guys started doing auditing, and any idea why? The general fund, the permanent fund and general fund were supposed to be separate. Any idea why it would have been displayed like that or shown
Sure.
like that? Okay.
Sure. So you guys were required to implement GASB 54. And 54 basically limited the funds that could be presented as special revenue funds. Traditionally, back in the old method, special revenue funds were reported for specific spending purposes, but not for specific revenue sources. With the implementation of GASB 54, required both tests to pass. So not only did you have to have a specific purpose, but you have to have a specific revenue source. And a specific revenue source would be a consistent revenue stream. So with your permanent fund, the only revenue that you had going into it was investment income. Well, GASB 54 said that does not constitute a revenue stream, and nor do transfers. If you transferred from one fund to another, that's a what we refer to as a other financing source or use. It's not a revenue, and so technically that permanent fund did not have a consistent revenue stream to keep it as a special revenue fund. So that was moved in for just financial statement purposes into the general fund. The the members of management had always kept that money separate. It was in an investment account. Sure, it was sitting in your general fund, but the entire balance is sitting in the investment account. Now that investment account had both your permanent fund and your major maintenance into one investment account. So, we had to determine what the value was for your permanent fund versus what the value for your major maintenance portion was. But both of those balances were in a separate investment account. Investment income, according to GASB 54, is not a revenue stream. It's referred to as an other source. So a consistent revenue stream would be, something that is designated. So technically right now, just because of all the hype over the permanent fund and all this, we broke it out. But technically, according to GASB 54, it should not be a special revenue fund because you do not have a revenue stream. If you look at your financial statements this year, you have no revenue. We just moved over the investment balance to another fund that was created in your software.
So would interest qualify as revenue or no?
No, that would be
No.
part of investment income. So
Okay.
really, a way to properly, and the reason why we moved it was just because of the feeling that we were getting from management and the concern, that this was being pulled into the general fund, but it had always been separate, and it's in the investment account within the general fund. So I want that to be crystal clear. I mean, it's not like they can just spend that money willy-nilly when they want to. I mean, it's sitting in an investment account by itself. It was over in there. To properly keep this as a special revenue fund. Mayor Campbell, I think that you were asking about revenue sources. One of the things that you guys can do is, and I know it's, kind of a sore subject because the general fund is in such a deficit right now, but is that you earmark a certain amount of your property taxes to grow the permanent fund. That would be where you would have a consistent revenue stream. Another way would be to maybe earmark some of the fees that you guys get related to that. That would also help grow the permanent fund and also the major maintenance. Because I know that, your infrastructure is getting old. There's going to be needs for replacements in the future. And why I say that's kind of a sore subject is because, those revenues that I'm talking about are pretty much coming from the general fund. Where the general fund is already hurting as far as, the deficit that has occurred over the years. But the real deficits, I mean, actually I have a little thing that I went through and I was looking at. You've actually had to be on the positive side. You guys had positive net income in your general fund since 2018. So 2018, you had 13,318 net income. 2019, you had 44,467 net income. 2020, you had 15,509. And in 2021, you had 12,786 that fell to the bottom line. So even though there's a deficit, I mean, yes, it would take a while with that net income to cover that deficit. And I probably went off on a tangent. I know you were asking about the permanent fund, but
No, you're doing a good job, because this is what we've all struggled with, and that's why I'm asking some of these questions. I mean, government accounting is complicated as anything. That's why you do what you do, and we don't. But to understand it, when we know we've got surplus every year. In some of these funds, we have a shortfall, a deficit every year, but then the fund balances are what are really getting us screwed up. And I want to make sure we're not panicking, strictly related, to fund balance.
Mayor.
So,
I
yeah,
think
Jennifer, go ahead.
Council chambers.
What's
It says
that?
I'm hosting this meeting now. We lost council chambers. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Fantastic. I see Rachel there.
Yeah, I got a thing on my, I don't know, because I was the first one signed in. It says I'm the host now. I don't really know what that means.
Okay, let's see. Hopefully
Hopefully they know they lost us.
let's
Yeah.
stand by here.
The recording thing is,
It's still going.
I don't know. Why is it flashing?
It's flashing.
What does that mean?
Mine's not. Oh,
I don't know.
I don't know.
let's see if they come back here. Sorry, Steve, stand by here.
Steve,
oh no.
You're doing a great job. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Are you sure they're not waiting in the waiting room if you're the host? Sometimes you have to let them in.
I don't know how that works. I don't want to be the host.
Oh.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, this has never happened before.
Stands for this.
Something new. Rachel, are you there? She's on our screen.
Yes, I am here, but not in council chambers, but separate.
I don't know how to make you talk, Laurel.
Let's see if they come back, or do we?
Fun.
On Heidi? Mayor
don't-
Campbell?
What's that?
Are you calling Heidi?
Yeah. I've been texting her here.
Okay.
Oh, what? Oh.
Let's see here. How long did I ramble, Jen, without you telling me that?
Not very long.
Oh, they lost internet.
Oh,
Hold on, they're working. Let's hope this meeting isn't over prematurely tonight.
Yeah, I would like to, be able to answer all your guys' questions, because
Yeah,
part
no,
of my process is to make sure that you guys are comfortable with the financial statements.
okay, they're trying to get it back here.
now can the participants, they can't hear us, the participants?
I don't think so. Oh, on the YouTube?
Yeah, or like,
Live anymore.
yeah, right.
Steven's raising his hand. I don't know how to let these people talk. Why am I the one?
Oh boy. Okay, she says Radzi is scrambling here to try to.
Go for it, Steven.
It's actually Harmony and we can hear you.
You can, okay.
Yeah. So just so you know, you're still on the minutes as far as the public is concerned.
Okay. Yeah, just so everyone that can hear us on YouTube, if you can hear us, we lost, the council chambers lost the internet connection. No shocker there in Soldovia, our good quality internet. They're scrambling to try to fix that here, so we'll see what happened. Hopefully somebody didn't hit a main line somewhere. Rachel, is the council with spit spots or with ACS?
I'm not sure.
I know that Radzi moved us over, but kept the backup line. I want to say that we switched from ACS to spit spots.
Okay, I know ACS is working. Laurel just said ACS is working fine. So I wonder if spit spots just went off.
I've got spit spot at home and it's working.
Okay. I'm letting them know here. Yeah, the ACS, let's see, the spit spots isn't working. They're trying to switch back over to ACS right now. They've got the backup line. I wonder how the recording is still live.
I have no idea. My thing isn't, is it usually red? I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
They're trying here.
I'm never signing in first again. I don't want to be the host.
Yeah, because it made Jen the host by default.
Okay, with the first one.
That's what
Interesting.
Laurel said, because you were first.
Yeah, I stayed in after the work session, just left. Usually that anxious.
Let's see. Yep. If she used her phone, I don't know if we would then have, I don't know if we would, that'd probably be terrible. I don't know if we would have the audio from the other council members. Because it wouldn't be, yeah, I don't know how that would work. Probably not good.
You know what our IT always says, reset the router.
Yep, reset it. That's the first one. They always, anytime you call IT, if you reset it.
Hopefully my IT isn't listening to this. I'll get in trouble by them tomorrow.
Can they use the library's Wi-Fi or something? Shouldn't there be options in that building?
Yeah, I would think.
Or the
Should be like the
or
Pentagon, right? The Pentagon, you have multiple.
fire department downstairs? Because I haven't got anything saying that the e-dispatch is down, so there's internet somewhere in the building.
Let me make a phone call.
Heidi, let me know, Mayor, that Radzi is frantically trying.
Okay, yep, that's what she told me too.
I see Heidi.
Something's happening.
Hello, I think we might be back.
You are back.
Oh,
Can you hear us?
We can hear you. He sounds like he can hear us, so that's
Take
good.
my host duties away from me.
Okay. Oh, come on. I'm sure you did fine.
I figured out how to let somebody speak.
No. Okay, I'm sure Bradley's on taking that back. And then I don't know if you guys know when we lost you, but we did lose you while Steve was just finishing up talking about the positive net income in the general fund since 2018.
Yeah, so I think, okay, so we'll go ahead and continue. Yeah, basically I had, Steve had then finished up by saying hopefully he hadn't delved too far elsewhere. And I don't know if you guys had heard me. I think we lost it right about there, just saying, yeah, the importance of what he's saying and understanding is super helpful with us in, and trying to understand our fund balances and where our priorities lie when it comes to budgeting and whether or not we're getting wrapped around the axle on Did we lose them again? No, we're still there. Okay. Whether or not we're getting wrapped around the axle and only focusing, or focusing too much on the negative fund balance versus the year, we've been operational, that positive income in the general fund since 2018, not much, albeit, but a little bit. So no, super helpful. One follow-up, Steve, on the GASB 54, and just so everyone knows, GASB is Government Accounting Standards Board. So if we don't have a revenue stream in this special, now that we've moved this to a special revenue fund, what happens if you're not in accordance with, is GASB 54 still is that still in effect? Or, what's the practical effect of that? Is there just a note in the audit that says we're not in compliance with that, or how does that work?
Well, so, we wouldn't want you guys to not be in compliance with GASB 54. So 54 is still required. It hasn't been superseded in any way, shape or form. So even though we moved it out this year, if you don't have a revenue stream for financial statement purposes, we would be reporting that back into the general fund. So, I don't know where we got cut off, but we were talking about, how you could have a consistent revenue stream.
Right.
And I hope everyone on council heard that. I just really wish I'd known where we got cut off. I don't want to bore people and repeat the same things again.
Did you guys hear that by chance about the, needing a dedicated revenue stream to go along with the special revenue fund?
We did hear that.
Okay, good. Good. So they got that, Steve.
Okay, great.
Okay. I've got a few more, but I'm going to give a break here. Anyone else?
So in this report that you said you pulled it out, but it has to go back in anyway. So, it was almost like you just pulled it out for informational purposes. I don't understand how. I get what you're saying, that it's supposed to be reported that way. So, but we're just not going to this year.
Well, your report is very, very low risk. If you guys don't have the amount of funding that you used to, we used to come out there and do a federal single audit and a state single audit. And so when you had those outside entities, your report went out there. There's nothing wrong with management saying, because, basically management came to me and said, we want to report that permanent fund as a special revenue fund and break it out from the general fund. Sure, we can do that, but if it just sits out there and there's no revenue stream, we can say, that, hey, the city's going to develop a revenue stream for the special revenue fund. So it's not like you're not in compliance with 54 by moving it out. It just eventually needs to have some sort of revenue stream, or it's going to have to be put back in because it wouldn't qualify as a special revenue fund. And so that, the revenue stream associated with that, specifically GASB 54 deals with other resources such as investment incomes and transfers that do not count as a revenue stream. So, really the only way that you can keep it, a revenue stream. So, or develop a revenue stream would be earmarking some, either a portion of your tax revenues, a portion of your fees. The fees don't necessarily have to come from the general fund. They could come from another fund. But you would have to have that earmarked. So we wouldn't be doing a transfer back and forth because the transfer doesn't qualify as a revenue stream. But if you said, 2% of our utility revenues are going to be earmarked for the permanent fund and the major maintenance fund to grow that fund, then that would be like taking those user fees and allocating 2% over as a revenue stream that would work under GASB 54. Because right now, with it being just an investment account, the only thing that you have is your interest and your change in your value associated with the investment account. And GASB 54 specifically excludes that from being a revenue stream. So, this GASB 54, it had been around while BDO was doing your audits. And they left it out there for quite a long time before, someone taking a closer look at it realized that, there is no revenue. So when we looked at it in 2013, we saw a little bit of investment income, but that doesn't qualify as a revenue stream. So we suggested, at the time, I believe it was Cassidy that was around during that time. We suggested that she move it for financial statement purposes in the general fund because it doesn't have a revenue stream and it doesn't qualify as a special revenue fund under GASB 54. So, eventually, if management really wanted it broken out this year, just seemed like there was, potentially, maybe some council members or somebody, thought that someone was misusing those funds. That is absolutely untrue in every which way. But because they were broken out, yes, they were in the general fund, but they were in an investment account that could not be touched without having council approval to do those. And your permanent fund has been consistent year after year. So, it's been since 2017, your permanent fund has been $570,144. In 2018, it was the same dollar amount, $570,144. In 2020, it was $570,144 again. In 2021, it's $540,144. It went down because of the council approval of the what were those kiosks?
Mhm.
And that's the way it's dropped. This money has always been there. And it's just been in the general fund. It hasn't been misused. It's there, it's available. It might not be the balances that you want. You have, if you combine those two accounts, the permanent fund and the major maintenance, I think you're around, don't quote me on this, but around $700 and some thousand combined. And yet you guys have about $2,000 in investment income after 1 year. That's horrible returns on your money. You're never going to grow this fund like you want it to grow with a $2,000 return in 12 months, for $250,000.
Yeah, and I think that's why we finally made the decision here and have moved that. That money wants to be moved. So that's part of our confusion, right? And lack of understanding. I mean, none of us are accountants, and just understanding that. So, so you've cleared up a lot. You've obviously cleared up a ton for me and hopefully other council members tonight. So, I think I've used it. A number of council members have used it. When we talked about, looking at those funds that were the the permanent fund was in with the general fund, and we referred to it as commingled funds. That's probably not the right term in accounting. Obviously, after listening to you, we should probably be using it. What word do we use, or what should we be using? And I mean, is commingling not the right word, or how does that work?
Commingling of funds would indicate that you have your personal funds commingled in with your business accounts.
Okay, which is obviously not the case in this case. Okay.
And so, I think, more of the concern, it seemed like that I was kind of getting a feel for was that they were for sure because the investment account went into the general fund and it wasn't broken out, that someone might be misusing funds. And I can't emphasize enough that has not occurred. We've never had a finding related to misappropriations of any kind going back to 2013 on forward. And so I think people were just confused that, well, it's not in the audit report. The PERM fund is not in the audit report. Well, the PERM fund was actually disclosed in the footnotes to the financial statements when it was, put into the general fund. And like I said, those have always been separate. That is an investment account. Yes, it's if you further wanted accountability, maybe you break out your permanent fund from your what are those other funds? The major maintenance that you want, and keep those separate into two separate accounts. But there is no problem with putting them as one account too.
And I think that's what we're looking for, is just some transparency. And I think that's the thought process. And I mean, generally I would support that, but so yeah, it looks like we can do that. If we need to work through that process with Gatsby 54. But you answered my question on basically, since you guys have come on board, I mean, it would have been clear if there was ever, if you had uncovered any kind of fraud, embezzlement, hiding or concealing of funds, or any kind of misappropriation. I mean, every year if you see something like that, what is the chain of events that happens if you ever do come across that? Would you notify immediately go to the council in our type of government, in the way we work with our system here in Soldovia?
So, it has happened to me in a smaller city. I mean, I can't name cities.
We hear it on the news. We've heard it on the news a number of times over the years.
But so our process is when we discover it, we want to gather as much evidence as we can. Because without evidence, all you're doing is you're potentially accusing someone without proof. We never want to do that. We always have to have proof in hand for that to stick. And whether we could develop that evidence automatically, that would be 100% reported to council. Anytime, even if we suspect it, but there's a good fraudster in place and they move things around and it's really hard to gather the evidence, we would come to the council and say, we think that there's fraud in the organization. We might not, either we have the evidence and we would show you the evidence, or whether we think that there is something fishy going on that we need to look into a little bit closer, and probably suggest at that point in time that you have a forensic audit to go more in depth. But usually what we do is we try to gather up support. so the smaller city that I was working with, it wasn't a very good fraudster. The evidence was there. So we went, our first thing to do was we went, not only did we inform the council, but we also go one level above the fraudster in the organization, and inquire of that person. And a lot of times, they're just as shocked by the fraud that has occurred. And it helps us gather some more potential evidence related to that. But if we ever came across it, no matter how small or however minor, we are required to report that. And since your audit is under governmental auditing standards, we would also be required to report that as a finding in your financial statements. So the smaller city, I can say that it was like $500,000 that the smaller city lost. We got the troopers involved. We got, we gathered all the evidence. They actually had a computer expert go behind the scenes, and they were actually able to develop some more evidence in the case that I'm referring to. And it was a slow process, but they're slowly getting to the point where they might get some justice. It's been about 4 years at the state trooper level. But just recently, they were, the gentleman that committed the fraud was served. So the process is a slow process. In the end, a lot of people do not prosecute fraud just because in the end, it's probably going to cost them more money than the guy stole. Just in attorney fees and everything else, increased cost and insurance related to that. And so, in a nutshell, we would always come to the council if we saw anything, and we would be required to report that. And I'm happy to report, just so nobody gets confused, that we've discovered no fraud, no embezzlement, no misappropriations of funds from the beginning of our year 2013 through 2021 now. There's been no, and we got BDO's report when we first did the 2013, and they didn't have anything at least in 2012. I can't speak before that, but an easy way to do would be to look at their audit reports. But I'm, as far as I know, there's been no fraud, abuse, misappropriations of funds within the city of Soldovia.
All right, well, that's good news. I mean, that's going back 10 years. That's in a snapshot. That's what I wanted to hear. So that's good. And I want to make sure, if there was, budgeting's not fun. It's not fun for any of us. I just want to make sure we clear the air and make sure that everyone's on the same page with that, and that everything is on the up and up. And we've had, no findings of any misappropriation or fraud. So, all right. Well, Steve, I don't want to ask you any more questions. You've answered a bunch tonight. You cleared up a bunch for me. Hopefully you've cleared up a bunch for council. So we've got to get on to approving this thing. Any other questions or comments for Steve from council before we go to the public?
Eric Campbell.
Yep, go ahead, John.
Hey, I just have one. I really appreciate your efforts and your questions there tonight to Steve. It helps me. I think it was time well spent for me as a new council member and what I learned here tonight. So I appreciate that from both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. Okay, anyone else? Okay, we will go to public. Heidi, do you have anyone from the public that would like to comment on the approval of our 2021 audit?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council for final action. And you have on page 59 of your regular packet, you have action memorandum 22-06, and this is approving this, excuse me, the certification of the FY21 audit as presented by Altman Rogers and Company, certified public accountants. We can either have some more discussion or we'll look for a motion to approve.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve memorandum 22-06.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve action memorandum 22-06. We have a second by Nathan. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of approving action memorandum 22-06. Nathan.
Aye.
Sweat.
Aye.
Rojas.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Swick.
Aye.
Motion is approved 5-0 with one excused. All right, Steve, we appreciate your participation tonight. Thank you. Sorry for the long series of questions, but I think, yeah, we got a good education tonight. A little bit more on public accounting and government accounting. So I really appreciate that. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say in closing.
Yeah, I just the more questions that you guys have, I think the better it is. By all means, I want to make sure that I answer all your guys' questions. So I think this was a real productive meeting. I really appreciate you guys inviting me, and it was my pleasure presenting the financial statements as well as answering your questions. And please enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. You have a good night.
All right, good night.
All right, good night. All right, it is 8:30. Let's take a 5-minute break here, and then we will come back. Everyone get up, stretch, get a cup of coffee, and then we'll come back and get through the rest of this meeting here, and hopefully before everyone's bedtime. So, all right, we'll recess for 5. Thank you. Give me 1 second here. All right, Heidi, you back in there?
We're here, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay, glasses on here. All right, if we've got everyone, we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. And it'll take us down to item K2, ordinance 22-11, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending Seldovia Municipal Code Title II, Sections 2.32.070, voter qualifications, and 2.32.080, election board, 2.32.140, disposition of challenge ballots, and 2.32.150, absentee voting. This will be found on page 60, excuse me, 60 of your packet. And Rachel or Heidi, you can take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you'll see this in your packet. And I apologize for those that have paper packets. It looks like the page numbers didn't make it on there. So it's about midway through the packet, right after the action memorandum for the audit. Just brief overview here. There is a memorandum included in the packet after the ordinance that just speaks to the fact that in FY21, council approved of amending the code for some administrative amendments to the election ordinances. Those are just cleaning up outdated language and wording, and better allowed the city to partner with the borough so that we could be ADA accessible through the use of their equipment. And after going through that election cycle last year, there were just 4 fairly minor items that were discovered that were still in need of amendment. The first being that under voter qualifications, there's a duplication where item 6 says has completed a voter registration card with the state of Alaska 30 days prior to an election. But it also states under number 4 that the voter is registered to vote in state elections at a residency located within the municipality at least 30 days before the municipal election at which the person seeks to vote. So different language, but the same concept. Under the election board, their oath says, "So help me God," which is not something that all election judges are comfortable signing an oath to. So just removing that language, "So help me God," under Amendment 3. There was some confusion over the process for, or I should say, not even confusion. The city didn't have a process for what to do if a ballot was rejected. So we get question ballots, challenge ballots, absentee ballots. If one, which we did reject one last year, was rejected, then do we have to inform the person? It's not law that we do. However, I felt that it was probably a best practice that if the city denies a ballot or rejects a ballot, that they send out just it's a basic letter, a cover letter, the same thing. Everybody just kind of lets them know why their ballot was rejected. That doesn't happen very often. And there's normally there's always very good reasons for it. But this puts the process in there that the clerk has to send that letter out, letting them know why that ballot was rejected. And then lastly, there was some confusion. This was the part that just was a little off last year, because it stated that the by mail ballots, or the by mail requests for ballots could occur no sooner than 20 days prior to the election. Well, it's pretty typical process across the state of Alaska. I don't know about nation, but across the state of Alaska, at least across the borough, that they accept ballots starting on January 1 of that election year. And we actually, in partnering with the borough, have a section for the city of Seldovia on their ballot application. So somebody who wants to fill out for by mail application for the borough can also check that they want to do it for the city. And that begins, they follow a January 1 schedule. So this is just saying, starting January 1 of that election year, somebody can apply for a by mail ballot. However, we're not going to let go of that ballot until they're readily available, which is 15 days prior to elections. So same time we would let out an in-person ballot, absentee ballot, we'll let out a by mail ballot, but we can collect them all year round. We just are not going to send them out until obviously that ballot is ready. And then also includes that the procedures just for that person returning the ballot through the mail, that they need to use an expeditious mail service, and that if they're received after the time that they're allowed to be received, they'll be marked invalid. So just kind of puts that language in there to help smooth the process for elections going forward.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Appreciate the overview of that. We'll go ahead and take it to council for initial comments, questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, it looks like a great cleanup of housekeeping on here. I'm glad to see it's gone through. I'm in favor of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else on council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, George.
Yeah, for the city clerk, all the mail-ins and absentee ballots do require a signature and some ID. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, they have a form, an application that they have to fill out in order to receive a ballot. And then, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, George. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move to the public. See if anyone from the public cares to weigh in on ordinance 22-11.
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Let me see real quick here. We'll bring that back to council. Harmony, I see you're online. Have you officially joined us?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, I just want to make sure so we can get that noted into the minutes that you are present and you will be voting. Okay, appreciate that. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring ordinance 22-11 back to council, and I'll just weigh in real quick. Yeah, I too am in support of this. I think it's a good cleanup, getting it consistent with Kenai Peninsula Borough, and then just cleaning up some general language to and procedures to make it that much more simplified, if you will. So I'll definitely be in support. Okay, any other closing comments before we call for a vote?
Would you like a motion?
Yep, looking for a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. We adopt ordinance 22-11.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve ordinance 22-11, second by Peyton. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, all those in favor? Nathan?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Swick?
Aye.
Peyton?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. Okay, it'll take us to item L, unfinished business, none. Item M, new business, adoption of Jackaloff Bay Action Plan. This is a follow-up from our April 1st, 2022 work session. This will be found on page 65 of your packet, and we'll go ahead and turn it over to the manager or the clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. I know at the meeting that we had on Jackaloff, you'd mentioned possibly wanting to reach out with council members to discuss options. There was a general consensus of the options that council was in favor of. So this meeting is just an opportunity to formalize the consensus that council expressed at the last meeting.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, yep, we just recently had this work session, and basically we had 4 options laid out in front of us. Option A was status quo. Option B was determining that it was not in the city's best interest and remove the dock. Option C was sell or lease Jackaloff Bay. There was an RFP portion to that. And then option D was determining that it was in our best interest to be the responsible party and determine that dock replacement is the best approach. We talked about how, one or all of these, in my opinion, almost all of these could be as part of the process, and it was all about timing and how we wanted to go about that. And I think generally we had consensus at that time that leaving the dock status quo as of now for a short period of time, and then at the same time, kind of in concert with that, explore option C, which was to look at issuing an RFP to see if there was any interest in the taking over either purchasing or leasing the dock, and not just the property, but to make sure that there's someone would be willing to move forward with looking at infrastructure there or something to that effect. So basically put out a request for proposal, see what we get. And then, in this whole process, I think we talked about was probably a 4, 5, 6 month process, get us through the fall, see what happens, and then come back. And then, we have got to make some decisions if we want to either continue with status quo or determine if we want to pull it and then or move forward with replacement. And I know the manager was also moving forward with a raise grant in there as well, for a little more on the long-term side. So that's it in a nutshell. So if anyone had any great epiphanies since then, or any additional things you want to talk about, now's the time to talk about it. But we got to give the administration some sort of direction to move forward in. So we'll go ahead and open it up.
Mr. Mayor, I have a quick question.
Yep, you bet.
Are we paying a monthly rate for the Tidelands right now?
No, we have not. Well, I take that back. And Rachel, you can chime in. I think we are being charged as if we had a lease, but we still don't have a formal lease signed. Go ahead,
Correct.
Rachel. I'll let you. Yeah.
That's exactly it. We pay an annual fee. I want to say it's $1,200 to $1,500, somewhere around there, for a use of the entry authorization of the Tidelands, but we don't actually have a lease in place yet.
So if we were to pursue that lease, that wouldn't raise our rate, but it would potentially give us a better footing for anything else that we need to do going forward with this project. Correct? Am I wrong in that understanding?
Yes, that's definitely the case, but then the city could also assume liability associated with oil spills or derelict vessels in that area, because it's not just the Tidelands that are right underneath the lease. I think it's a little over 2 acres. So it's that whole area. So that would be if council does want to move forward, considering the dock, the city's responsibility to maintain and manage, then that would be what the city would want to do, but it does come with risk as well as the benefit.
Okay, I just think that we should consider how long it took the city to actually achieve that title and lease and what the benefits are versus the pros. It sounds like it's a separate discussion, but anyways.
Okay, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Vivian.
Oh, yeah. I'm still in favor of what we decided or what we discussed earlier at our work session. And option C is a direction that I'm interested in going for. And then, of course, as you stated, where we are is going to encompass part of option A, option B, and option D, little components. But I'm ready to move forward with a motion if the council doesn't have anything else to change our direction. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Jennifer?
Yeah, so on that, I'm in favor of pursuing option C to begin with. It says sell or lease. Do we want to be leasing it and still be tied to it? Or if we're going to go down this road, do we just sell it and wash our hands of it? I almost feel like it's a moot point if we're going to try and lease it. We're still going to be.
What the RFP does is buy us a little bit of time, right? And also is asking to bring forth a little bit of creativity. I mean, there may be someone out there that is interested and looks at this and goes, yeah, I could definitely, I've got funding to put a new dock in there. I can come up with a way to make it pay and make money. I'm not saying that would be easy, but if there's many people in the dock business that have money and we don't. So, and it would be all open to negotiation, right? Nothing has to come out of an RFP. Someone submits a proposal, then it's all negotiation. So, but no, I understand where you're coming from with your questions for sure.
Right. And I guess I do see that. I guess we shouldn't eliminate that option if that's what somebody is going to bring forward. So,
I mean, that might be the best thing that we get for a little while, it's hard to say without actually seeing if there's any interest in this at all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely for seeing what can happen with option C. I don't know. I mean, how specific are we supposed to lay this plan out? Like we said, we want to kind of do it all, encompass it all. So I don't know how.
Well, I think for tonight, and I think what we talked about, if you remember, I think we can do if we've got, excuse me, sorry, I still got the nasty. If we can do move forward with direction on option C, putting out an RFP. If we choose to go keep it status quo, and then we set a time certain date to come back and revisit this. Prior to that, the Uplands lease being, because that's going to come also happen in November, I believe. So I think we would want to start probably looking about this, after the summer season's over here, toward, probably no later than the 1st of October. We need to start, looking at this again and seeing where we're at. By then, we would certainly have, anybody responded to with an RFP, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think we have to necessarily visit the B and the D. I think if we get something in the short term for status quo and an RFP, to get us through till October 1, then we can, we can come back. And then at that time, I think we need to start looking at, what are we doing? Are we leaving it in for another year? Are we pulling it? What are we doing?
Right. And should the raise grant is still happening?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor Campbell.
Yep. Go ahead, John.
I'd be pretty much in favor with what you stated. The only difference I have is, come this fall, if we don't have any interest at all and the city's still in the complete situation with the liability out there, I might be in favor of pulling that dock.
Yeah, and certainly that that may be everyone's mood then, at that point. But I think now we just stick to the task at hand, get us through the next 6 months here, and then we revisit that and we have to, we got to do something here other than kicking the can down the road. But the season is here basically in less than 30 days. So to uproot it now would kind of be a disservice. I think.
Right, I agree. It doesn't mean that I don't see it as something valuable to everybody here. It just, somewhere down the line, we got to make a decision.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I also like option C. I think that's the route we ought to go. I also think that, this issue is much more complicated than just saying, okay, let's just pull the dock right off the bat. I think we need to explore some options, put a time frame on it. I don't know what you guys want to do as far as getting the RFP. It certainly shouldn't drag out. Yeah, and then if we don't get anybody, we'll have to, just like there what it says, we'll have to reevaluate option A, B, and D. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments before we go to public? Okay, we'll go ahead and see if anyone from the public wants to weigh in on the adoption of the Jackalope Bay Action Plan. Heidi, anyone from the public or in the building?
Yes, we do have one from the public, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
You could just state your name for the record. You have to speak into the microphone or they can't hear you.
I am Henry Crowell. I'm wondering what is the potential for the Jackalope Bay dog? What would they be expected to, if they were collecting like transient or something, what would they, is there for planning?
Yeah, I don't think, Henry, thanks for your question. Yeah, we don't have any kind of, like a revenue sharing or anything like that. I mean, I think that would all of that would be looked at as part of the negotiation. If there was someone that was, expressed any kind of interest in the dock at all, then all those things could be, up for discussion and negotiation.
And the community that's out there, do they know about it, the situation? I guess that's all I have.
Yeah, we've sent out mailers and we've had a number of a few advertisements and postings, and so yep, we've definitely been soliciting comment. We have received a number of comments from folks from some from out the road and some from across the bay. All right. Anything else, Henry, or is that it?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, Heidi, in the public?
I'm not seeing any more hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and bring it back to council for any further discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
I'd like to make a motion, please. I'd make a
Okay.
motion. Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we direct our city manager in option C, which is sell or lease Jackalope Bay Dock. With steps as soon as possible, the city will issue an RFP to lease or sell the Jackalope Bay Dock as is. If there are no proposals submitted, the city will reevaluate options A, B, and D. And then on the interim, we will be working out of option A, which is status quo. Continue with minimal routine maintenance of the dock, give the dock's current condition. It is forecasted that the maintenance costs and needs of the dock will increase over time, and also continue with minimal enforcement from the harbor master and SPD chief. And at the same time, our city manager is also working on the RAISE grant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. All right, we have a motion by Rojas to look at option, go ahead and direct the city manager to issue an RFP as per option C, and then continue with option A currently. And then do we want to set a deadline as part of that to revisit this no later than October 1, Vivian, as part of that motion?
I would agree with that. That way we have time of that, the other Tidelands, November 22nd deadline. Yes, Mr. Mayor, that would be good.
Okay. And then as part of that, to have the council revisit all of this no later than October 1.
Correct.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, any further discussion before we vote? Okay, we will go ahead and vote. All those in favor, Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick,
Aye.
Peyton.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. And Vivian, you'll probably have to give that wording to Heidi. You can email that wording over to Heidi if she needs that. So, okay, appreciate
Please and
that,
thank you.
everyone. All right. Okay, that'll take us to, excuse me, item M2, action memorandum 22-07, city council statement of non-objection of a new application for a restaurant eating place licensed by Jack and Ava's Restaurant. And this will be found on page 69 of your packet. And is there any council member that wishes to recuse as
Mayor Campbell?
Yep.
I wish to recuse for obvious reasons.
Okay, yep, and as John is one of the owners of that establishment, we will accept his recusal and continue on with 5 council members. Of course, if there's any questions, we can ask you any questions. You just won't be voting on the matter. Let's see, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Stav.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, just finishing up my note there. So this, like you said, was on page 69 of the packet. It's action memorandum 2207, asking for city council consideration of approving a city council statement of non-objection of a new application for a restaurant eating place licensed by Jack and Ava's Restaurant. The information and application follows in the packet, and it's there for your review and approval.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council or comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
we're referring to it as a new application, but it's just new as in this year new, just for clarification. There's nothing really different.
No, this is a new application. So it's
Oh.
for a new liquor license in town. A restaurant eating place liquor license. So there is restrictions on it.
Okay, got it. Well, my compliments to the applicant because they did a very good job. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else?
I also am in favor of it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Harmony. Any other comments before we go to public? Okay, we'll go ahead and go to public. If there's anyone that wishes to comment on the application for a new restaurant eating place license for Jack and Ava's Restaurant.
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and bring it back to council for any further discussion or final action for action memorandum 22-07, which is a statement of non-objection. And I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
I move the council adopt memorandum 22-07.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Nathan to approve action memorandum 22-07, which is a statement of non-objection. We have a second by Swick. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, all those in favor, Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Swick, Is that an aye?
Oh, yeah, I'm usually after John and he's
Getting tired. And Peyton.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes 5-0 with one abstention there. Or one recusal. Okay. Okay, motion is passed. Thank you. That'll take us down to item N, City Manager's Report. And the written report is provided in the packet on page 92. And Rachel can give us a brief overview and we'll get wrapped up here.
Okay, I'll try to go through this quick. Just wanted to share with the council that Mayor Campbell, the city clerk, and I had a great meeting with Senator Murkowski and Senator Stevens on March 15th. They're very supportive of the city and its capital improvement program and the city trying to pursue raise grant funds. Senator Sullivan's office actually said that raise would be the most appropriate grant opportunity in their estimation for the infrastructure associated with the dock, Jackaloff Bay dock. So that was a really great meeting, and it's exciting to be here in Anchorage and meeting with officials from all over the state as well as Washington, D.C. And I learned some really inspiring information from the EPA and DEC today that I'm excited to share with the council at a later date. I also wanted to thank the city clerk because she helped the city get a $750 scholarship to defray the cost of us, Jan and myself, attending this meeting here in Anchorage. So thank you so much, Heidi, for that. I'm just going to skip through here. The city was unable to pursue the AARP grant for this funding cycle for Lake Susan Trail improvements. We're going to be better prepared for next year. We just couldn't get someone to help us with cost estimations and materials and pricing. So we're going to be better prepared for the next time that grant is offered. Speaking of grants, Mayor Pierce has offered his grant writing services to Soldovia through his grant writing staff. So that's an excellent public-public partnership that Soldovia can look forward to. Refuse collection services. So the last day that we have tentatively scheduled for trash pickup is April 13th, and we still do not have a team set in place yet to continue after Cindy mom leaves that day. Still on my mind how to address that, and we'll email the council when we figure something out. Otherwise, we may have to put that service on hold until we can find a couple folks to help make that happen. Our best practice score has decreased. It went from 65 from the fall 2021 to 55 in the spring of 22. This is because based on the quarter of October through December, our utility system at the time in our finance reports was reflected as operating at a loss in revenue with insufficient revenues to cover expenses. And so this was one of the things that the city needs to have in place in order to qualify for state revolving loan funds and other funding through the DEC. So it's an ongoing issue for the city, and the city clerk is helping by drafting a remote operator plan so that we can have an operator that does meet the state certification requirements to operate the plant. So we get the full points for that and hopefully can get loans in the future. The city has also been inundated with water leaks, and I learned last week that we may have found the really big leak that's been causing, I think it's approximately 125,000 gallons of treated water to leave the system. So hopefully that's something that Public Works has had a chance to look at and assess to see if the water leak that we think was the big one was found. So just keeping council up to date, and wanted to give a shout out to ARWA, also John Kennedy Jr., who works for the Alaska Rural Water Association and helping the city find those leaks. We have water back on at the city office. That's very exciting. We had a significant oil leak in our grater, and there was a temporary fix to the oil pan. So hopefully that stays in place and we can keep that grater going. I've been told it's running great as of now. Our new grader has been delayed till September. Originally, delivery was supposed to be by the end of June, but now they've pushed it off to September due to It looks like factory ship dates due to continuing major components supplier interruptions. Soldovia's Tim Dillon of Dillon and Dillon is going to lead a volunteer work party for re-oiling the Gateway Pavilion on May 14th. That's a Saturday. Hopefully council can come and help with that project. We still haven't had planning commission meetings yet, but we do have a quorum with Henry Kroll's appointment. The ferry didn't have any issues with the city moving ferry operations to the multipurpose building, if that's something that the council wanted to do. We are going to use the police laptop federal highway grant to also get a docking station for the police chief. So that's really exciting. We were hoping to have senior meals back in person in April, but because of the spike in COVID, it's now been delayed till May. And so I'll let council know as soon as Jan lets me know what date they're thinking of trying for in person. Our healthcare premium rates didn't change from last year to this year, so that's great to not have an increase in healthcare costs. And Councilmember Nathan asked a question at our February 28th meeting regarding why the fund balance for the general fund went up substantially while the expenses stayed the same. So the answer to that question, which we've since talked about, was the permanent fund being incorporated into the general fund. And then lastly, aside from providing council with a whole bunch of information, I'm hoping that after the budget is introduced and adopted in May, that the meetings will drop off and we'll be able to go back to our regular council meeting schedule with a few work sessions before regular meetings. So thank you so much for all your patience and all of the meetings, great discussion and information, and hopefully we can go back to things as normal. So of course, that just depends on what council wants to talk about and accomplish. That's it. That's all I have for council tonight. And please let me know if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate that. Any questions for the manager from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, if you could update me, I don't know, I missed this part about the city moving operations to the multipurpose room for the Lasser Marine Highway. Why are we considering that?
That was just if council wanted to take the city office and repurpose it, lease it to see if we could get another business in there, try to reduce energy costs and consolidate operations and not have internet or phone there. There's still some question on what utilities that building generates, but it was just part of that effort of if we did move out of the city office, what would happen with the ferry. So the ferry did confirm that they wouldn't have an issue as long, we would just need to make sure that we told people where to find us if we did that.
Okay, just part of the bigger picture. And also in have we got any applicants at all for the garbage collection?
Yes, we have had a couple applicants and which was really exciting, but I'm still in the process of reviewing them.
Great. As always, a great report you have here. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else for questions for the manager? Okay, thank you, Rachel. As always, lots of good information. Appreciate that. Item O, informational items not requiring action. A budget work session is scheduled to be held prior to the next regular meeting at 4:30 on April 25th, 2022. Item P, executive session, none. Item Q, council and mayor comments concerning items not on the agenda. Start off with Nathan.
Yeah, nothing at this time.
Okay, Sweat.
Yeah, thank everybody for attending. Henry, thank you for being in the audience. And as usual, you guys, staff does a really great job with everything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rojas.
Yeah, great meeting as always. The preparation was fantastic. Just for the Art Council is putting on the Seldovia Earth Day Film Festival this Friday at the SOC at 7 p.m. April 22nd. Everybody, if anybody's interested to go up, it's free admission and be lots of great films to watch, but it won't be online. It'll be only in person. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vivian. Kennedy.
No, I don't have anything other than thank you, Rachel, and and the city clerk for the hard work as usual.
Okay, thank you. Swick,
No comment.
hey, Peyton.
No comment.
Okay, all right, getting late in the day. All right, well, my thanks to everyone. Sorry about all the long-winded questions earlier, but I think we all got a good, little bit of a good education on government accounting again tonight. Appreciate all the work and that went into the packet this evening, obviously big packet. So our next meeting is going to be, regular meeting will be held on April 25th, 2022 at 6 p.m. And I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
Any objection? Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
good night.
Yep, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Vivian, before you go. Already gone.
Ooh.
Gotta be